What's the secret you discovered that made you leave your ex? Story 1. Saw a message preview on her lock screen of a dude heart reacting to a message from her saying, "At least you know whenever I'm with him I'm thinking of you." We had just come back from a holiday for our anniversary and moved in together. Story 2. I bragged to a friend in front of my girlfriend that my girlfriend and I had only fought once in our 2 years of dating. My girlfriend said the reason we never fought was because she didn't care enough about me to fight about anything. She also was cheating on me, but I didn't learn that one until after the relationship ended. Story 3. The guy she was cheating on me with found out about me. He found me at a bar, told me about it, bought me a drink, and I immediately got on the phone and broke up with her. I'm not going to go into super deep detail, but it was nice to have an honorable dude give me the warning instead of weeks of suspicion. I was about to get an apartment with her, and I dodged a bullet. Story 4. 3 months after moving our 3 kids and us to another state, she was cheating and got pregnant. She had the child with that guy, then proceeded to cheat on him to get pregnant again, except with twins. So 6 kids in 7 years with 3 people that I know of. Story 5. Turns out she was essentially collecting boyfriends like they were limited edition trading cards. I was apparently the summer edition. Came to light when I bumped into Mr. Spring at a coffee shop who was just as clueless as I was. We grabbed a drink to discuss our shared season of dismay, ended up becoming friends instead. Sort of a bittersweet bonus prize. Story 6. The coworker he was worried I was attracted to, I was. The difference is I never talked to him outside of work-related things and shut him down immediately when he showed interest in me. A girl coworker gave my ex 1 ounce of attention, and he cheated and left me for her almost immediately. Later regretted it and said the grass isn't always greener. Now he's with her because I wouldn't move back with him and he didn't want to be lonely. Glad I stayed on my side of the lawn. I would never want to be the one responsible for how awful another person feels because I couldn't stay faithful at work. A partner should never have to feel insecure about you going to your job. Story 7. She was talking to a guy in another state, decided she liked him better. He was coming to see her and that's when I found out about him. She basically told me he wasn't going to be happy to see me around and to go away. Well, the joke was on her because he came to tell her he found someone at home and was breaking up with her. After he left, she decides to come crawling back to me, and as much as I wanted to get back with her, I just couldn't trust her. Story 8. Her secret heart, she wanted to be a trad wife. In my 30s, I was working a good-paying union job as a welder in a shipyard, a job I truly loved. I owned a home, but had no other debt. Our car was paid for. She worked as a sushi waitress a couple times a week and earned all of our fun money plus a little extra for her hobbies. Things were chill. We shared our car, which wasn't a big deal since our shifts never crossed. And if she ever needed the car that day, she would bring to work in the morning at 5 a.m. and head back to do her day. A few years go by and she expresses interest in going back to school. Awesome. She'd had some public school trauma, so we spent a lot of time talking it over, and she decided to start with one community college art class. Low stakes, creative, aligned with her interests. She loved it. Wonderful. She loved it so much she wanted to start full-time classes. We pulled out our finances and looked things over. I could pick up overtime easily, so I'd start picking up an extra shift a couple times a month. She dropped down to 1 shift at sushi. This makes things tight, but she's really starting to blossom. Then the next quarter rolled around, and she decided she needed a car of her own in order to take the classes she wanted. Sharing a car had its limits. We take the finances out again, and the only way to make that happen was her earning $300 more a month to cover the new car note. Or for me to work 6 days a week, every week. I said I would not do that. Shipyard welding is hard work. This is when her secret was revealed. She told me with vitriol and rage, "I will never work as hard as you. I will never earn as much as you. You have to take care of me that way, and you need to get used to that now." It was there that I realized I didn't have a wife who wanted a 50-50th partnership with me. She wanted me to spend my lifetime providing her with a lifestyle she herself wasn't willing to work for. 10 years building up to that moment. 7 years of marriage shattered with that secret heart of hers. I filed for divorce 3 months later and never looked back. Story 9. I always suspected because he liked all her stuff on Facebook but barely liked my stuff anymore. But maybe it's just the algorithm, right? I rationalized it. Then during a get-together with our friends, my stomach drops when I see her face walk in the door. I hold it together for about 3 hours, but I can't help see how they light up when they talk to each other. Then I went to the bathroom to throw up and get myself back together. I was overreacting, seeing things that weren't there. It was just anxiety coming from my last relationship ending with him cheating. I spent an hour there crying and he didn't even check on me. I finally go out and don't see either of them. IDK what compelled me, but I looked for them, and there they were on top of each other. Neither of them even looked at me. They just stopped and stared at the wall like I wasn't there. Said nothing. He denied it till the day I blocked him. He said she was just drunk and he was being there for her. I wanted to say I needed him to be there for me, but there was no point. There was no rational thought in his words. He was just spewing out whatever he thought would be easiest to end the conversation. It didn't matter what I said because he didn't care. But even his friends admitted it, and now she's his GF, and I've never been able to love since. Story 10. I want to preface this by saying we had an open relationship, so him being with other women was not the issue, but it was relevant to me leaving. I'd come home from work one day. He greeted me and was being very affectionate, so we had sex and ate dinner and all was well. The next morning, I went to the computer and found a video up on the screen. It was of us being intimate the day before. The hidden webcam was even still running. We'd talked previously about filming us together, and had done it a few times before, but not in years. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, so I approached him and told him what I found, that I wasn't okay with the secrecy, and if he wanted to film us together, he needed to let me know, and involve me in the decision. He agreed, apologized, and we moved on. A little less than a year later, I was woken up to him coming to bed. I felt him lifting up the blanket, saw a flash of light, and turned to see he was taking photos of me naked with his phone when he thought I was asleep. I freaked, and we had a massive argument. I told him again that this was a huge boundary crossing, that I was not okay with this kind of thing, and asking why he would do this to me, how he could see me at my most vulnerable and see only an opportunity to take advantage of that, but didn't get much of an answer beyond, I don't know. I made him delete the photos, and he left the bedroom to sleep on the couch, but not before asking if I wanted to break up. I was still struggling with what had just happened and wasn't thinking clearly enough to make a decision like that, so I told him no. I asked him if he did this to other people, and he told me no. Just me, I guess. We moved on from it, as much as I was able to move on, that is, because I stayed for another year. That year was the darkest time of my life. I was terrified of him doing it again, of cameras being in our bedroom, of him spying on me through my phone camera. I covered myself all the time. I put stickers on my phone camera and on my laptop. I was afraid to sleep naked, though I forced myself to a few times in the hope it would help get rid of the fear. But I wasn't able to truly forgive him, trust him, or move on from my paranoia that the times I had caught him were not the only times he'd done this. And I ended up snooping through his account on the computer. I found videos of other women over the last couple years, escorts or hookups, I'm not sure, taken with a hidden camera, and something in me broke. He had lied to my face when I asked him if he did this to other people. I told him I was leaving that week. He didn't know that I knew about the other videos. It took me a long time to get over the shame of staying as long as I did. I blame myself for not putting my foot down the first time and leaving. Setting a boundary means nothing if there is no consequence. It was as if I had given him the okay to treat me and others that way. Story 11. She knew we were tight on money after she moved in with me, and she needed to find a job urgently. She claimed to be applying for jobs all the time. She didn't want me looking over her resume or application letters. Months later, I discovered she never applied to any jobs out of fear for rejection. Story 12. The first girlfriend I had, she wanted us to run each other's credit to make sure we were financially compatible. I said sure. So she signed up for her credit report. I signed up for mine. She gave me a copy of her Experian report, a PDF copy, and it looked good, so it ticked off the box of fiscally responsible. A few weeks later, I overheard her talking to 2 different collection agencies, and I wondered why she would be, if her credit score was over 780. I confronted her about it, and she told me she doctored the credit report because she liked me, and she had horrible credit. I told her I would have stayed with her if she was making an effort to clean up her financial past, but I couldn't overlook the lying. Story 13. After 2 years, he yelled at me that he didn't like or respect my dad. Not because he did anything wrong, but because he's native. I guess my mom being white meant I was passing enough for him. Dude was an abusive POS to me constantly, but when he said that, it just broke something in me. He actually thought I was joking when I packed my stuff and left to my parents. Story 14. That she was having an affair. This affair with a married man went on for years before we got married, and at times during and up to our divorce. She actually followed him from one state to another when he moved. He was also part of my friend group after we got married because she was helping his wife with a home-based business. I even used to babysit the affair partner's kids. We divorced and I told them they were crazy. I talked him into dumping his wife. She was indeed crazy, and they have been married for close to 10 years now. Story 15. I'm 31F and he's 29M. Found out he was cheating with a man, aside from cheating with his ex, a coworker. A former fling less than 6 months in our relationship. He denied cheating with a man to this day, despite the man he cheated with admitting to it. I did not leave him over these cheating, though. Dumb of me, I know. We went on LDR. He continued his cruel ways and finally left me for good when I asked for what I deserved, which are the bare minimum. Story 16. It's interesting how certain moments can be so revealing. For me, the turning point was realizing that I was constantly compromising my own happiness and values to keep the peace in the relationship. I discovered my tendency to suppress my needs and desires, thinking it was easier than addressing issues head-on. The secret wasn't just one thing, but rather an accumulation of little moments where I found myself feeling unappreciated and neglected. When I finally acknowledged that my needs mattered too, it became clear that I deserved more than a relationship that felt one-sided. Leaving my ex was scary at first, but it opened the door to finding a sense of self-worth and happiness I hadn't felt in a long time. It taught me the importance of healthy boundaries and being true to myself. Has anyone else had a similar realization that pushed them to make a big change? Story 17. She worked at one of the stores I had merchandised for years. My relationship ended, so a few months later I approached this girl and gave her my number. She texted enthusiastically, but said she had just gotten out of a relationship so wouldn't want to rush into anything. So I was like, hey, me too. We got along really well, hung out every day for 9 months. Then over the phone one night when I was on vacation, she teased me when she heard me say to my mom that I was talking to a friend. She's like, a friend, eh? I said, let's talk about that when I get home. It had been 9 months, so I'm like, okay, it's safe to say we're together now. She got quiet and stopped texting me. I was so confused, no explanation, so I made a Facebook and looked her up. She never broke up with the boyfriend, essentially cheated on both of us for 9 months. That was fun. I messaged the guy and told him to call me. When I told him, first thing he said was, it's not the first time she's done this. They're still together. Just had a kid. Story 18. She didn't pay the rent, got upset with her and asked her if she could pay it. I'd already paid my portion to her to send to the landlord. She said she did. A few days later, I get a message from the landlord asking for the rest. She still hadn't paid it all. Finally, I spoke to the landlord myself and took some money out of my savings to pay the rent. Found out after I got the number amount from the landlord and doing the math that she hadn't only not paid the rent and lied, then just paid a part of it and lied, but she also pocked $50 of the rent money I had paid that she was meant to send to the landlord. I'd already had one foot out the door of the relationship by then, but this is what made me actively start looking for other places to live. Story 19. He took a girl that I shouldn't have been worried about to a Europe trip. Then when I left him, he still had her visit him. A few months later, he was mad that why I was overreacting and cut contacts with him. LOL, he reached out years later, was asking to do business with my dad. My dad is a very successful businessman. I told him I would let him know that was 3 years ago, LOL. Story 20. Went to a Christmas party with a group I belonged to. The wife had a few and was bragging about how she lied to me about a money issue. Several months previously, we had an issue with cash in the bank. And back then, you used checks. Well, when all was said and done, it cost around $450 in bounced check charges. Come to find out, she took $250 out without telling me to give to her deadbeat family. So $700 and a huge dose of shame later. I pretty much left that group over it too. Story 21. We would have weekly lunch dates on Wednesdays at the same restaurant. It was his favorite place, he said. He was only available Wednesday at noon, he said. Well, I had my phone stolen from work one Wednesday and decided to go wait at our spot for him anyways. I was chatting with a waitress who I hadn't seen there before and eventually asked to borrow her phone to call my BF and let him know my phone got stolen, but I was waiting there for him. Typed in his number and his contact came up with a photo of him and his dog in his bed, no clothes, and we both said, "How do you know my boyfriend?" She usually has Wednesdays off and was just covering a shift that day. They have weekly Wednesday dinner dates. Story 22. Her and I had been high school best friends and dated for a little bit before she broke up with me after we graduated. We remained friends, had conversations to reconcile, and continued to be in contact with each other for over 18 years. We had a silly pact where we would marry each other if we were over 35 and single. Well, we were both single, done with dating, obviously had chemistry, and decided to say screw it and go for it slowly. We were all in. I didn't think anything otherwise and didn't suspect a thing. She lived about 2 hours away by plane on a direct flight, so seeing each other was easy. Well, after a few months, she had a manic episode and went missing. So I called her parents and they hadn't heard from her in a week. They were out of town. So they were sending her sister to check on her and calling friends. I called her work at the deli she worked at. The moment I said that this was her boyfriend, her boss said, "Well, I'm her boyfriend." Suffice to say, she'd been living a double life. He'd been giving her money for her flights to visit sick family members, me, and see my dying dad, that she said was her uncle to him. I had also helped her a couple times for flights too, so she was pocketing the money. Her family and I were in contact during the whole thing, so I told them what was happening, and she didn't like that because she got exposed of the fraud she is to her family.